Welcome to Single Tree Nation Show. I'm your host, Charlie Eblin, founder, owner of Single Tree Woodfire Barbecue. Our show is on a mission of growing community through the online storytelling and digital hospitality. We thank you for tuning in and enjoy the show. All right, Mr. Peter Demas. I am beyond stoked to have you here today, my friend. I've met you years ago, and I've just always been kind of in awe of what you and your family have built in this community, and thought it would be an outstanding thing to have you on the show and kind of dive into what the Demases have all been about, and what you're about, and how your journey through life has led you to now being a restaurateur, an attorney, college professor, an author, and not last and not least, but a husband and a father, and a father of our good Lord and Savior, right? So it's absolutely a pleasure to have you. We always start the show off with giving your elevator pitch of telling the world of who you are and what you do. And so we'll give you 60 seconds here to kind of tell everybody who Peter Demas is.
Well, you just listed all the stuff that I do, but that's not necessarily who I am.
Right.
I'm the simple thing when someone says who you are, because everything you do that's who you are can always change. I can change my name, I can change my job, I can change everything like that. But the one thing I can't change is I'm a child of God. And so everything that I do with that criteria, with that premise in mind, knowing that that can't be taken away from me. And so that's the easiest, simplest thing to go with on who I am, is that I'm the child of God. But I do a lot of things in order to reflect that. And that you listed off a lot of the stuff that I do. I also help coach soccer teams. I just whatever I like to do generally involves helping other people or teaching other people or something of that nature. I really enjoy that aspect of life, whether it's in the restaurant or outside the restaurant. That's where I seem to get most of my passion from.
I love it, man. I love it. I think to be successful in the restaurant business, you have to be a teacher first, right?
Well, you have to be a teacher, you got to be a babysitter, and you got to be a policeman. So
right. Yeah, you got to do all of the things. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. So we were talking before this, and your family started the Demas's restaurant, and yesterday was 33 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. They started December the 12th of 1989. My parents, my father was in the Western Sizzlin franchise for a while. He had opened up Toots in the early 80s. And then he wanted just to retire where he didn't have any partners, no one he had to answer to. So it was his retirement restaurant, and he started it and came here. We had a Western Sizzlin here, and they fell in love with the community. And so that's why they decided to move here and open that one up in December.
That's outstanding. Now, you don't have any affiliation with Toots anymore, correct?
No, we sold Toots in 2006 to Wade Hayes.
Okay. Yeah. Wade's doing a pretty good job himself. We're trying to get him to come join us as well. So your dad was at Western Sizzler, started Toots, then did Demas's.
Yeah, actually, even between that, there was when Western Sizzlin started going downhill, and his partner died. He had to get another partner, and one that was going to eventually buy him out. And so he partnered with Dave Wattell, who was the really well known for building up O'Charlie's. He's actually one of the founders of Logan's in Santa Fe. I mean, just his restaurant resume is just huge.
Right.
So he became partners with him with Western Sizzlin, and over the 5-year partnership they had. But they also converted the Western Sizzlin here to Trapper's Restaurant. Very few people probably remember Trapper's, located over, where was it? Party Foul is now, I believe, located over there. And so he got a little taste of full service at that point in time as well. And that was what part was where we kind of stole a lot of the ideas of our service standards and how to actually wait on tables, because Western Sizzlin wasn't full service.
Right.
To bring that over to Demas's.
Yeah. That's outstanding. What's where did the spaghetti and all of the bread. I mean, I can just go on for days about the soup. I just thinking about Demos's brings me back to my childhood and being in high school and coming over and getting the soups and the salads and the spaghetti. And where did all those recipes come from?
So originally there was not that many. Matter of fact, if you go in there now on the wall, we have our original menu. And at that time, he just wanted, it was called Steak and Spaghetti House.
Okay.
And that was all he wanted to do. There was going to be no other side dishes. You could only get a side of spaghetti, and that was it. And mostly steaks and a few other items that he had. And he got the idea from a restaurant in Knoxville that he saw back in the 70s. And he just loved the idea. Matter of fact, he had a Yellow Pages ad that he had cut out that had the word steak and spaghetti. He really liked that idea. The steaks he had, he kind of created his own steak seasoning and marinade from that. And but the how to grill them, how to brown the steaks properly, he learned through Western Sizzling and through all the training and everything they had to do with it. And then the spaghetti recipes, some of the spaghetti recipes, one of them was the franchisor for Western Sizzling was Sicilian. And he gave him that recipe, and he waited until he died before he would do anything with it. But that recipe, frankly, is actually my favorite. It was the meat sauce spaghetti, but it was a little too spicy for most of the people. So he had to kind of cut it back a little bit, make it a little bit more palatable for American taste buds at that time. Americans have advanced their taste buds a whole lot since 1989, but back then it was a little bit different. They weren't used to a lot of those flavors. So that's where that came from. And then many of the others just kind of happened with time. And then when he gets bored, he adds new menu items. And so I find new things to do. He adds new menu items. And so the menu just kept growing and kept expanding. And we added different side dishes because people here, again, it was a rural community at that time. They were not going to have steaks without potatoes. So we had to have potatoes. And then we didn't know what to do with the leftover potatoes. So we made them the hash browns, and we created it from it. Other spaghettis that we got, there was a restaurant. I was going to school in Memphis at the time, and there was a restaurant I stopped along the way, and it had a chili spaghetti, and we created the chili spaghetti, the Mexican spaghetti off of that. So there's just been a lot of different ways and a lot of little different creations that have come. We've had employees that are like, hey, try this, and we tried it, loved it, and we might have to modify it to make it operationally sound. There's some things that you can do great when it's like 3 people, but all different when you're doing 300.
Yes, sir.
So that's part of what we've kind of had to learn to do throughout the years.
My partner and I own a barbecue company, and my partner and I came up with a recipe for a stuffed barbecue waffle.
Ooh.
And you talk about the difference in 3 people and 300, and it's amazing, Peter. I'm telling you, it is absolutely amazing. We all love it. Trying to put that on the menu has been an operational nightmare. So Brent, when you're watching this, the waffle will come one day. Just we got to figure the operational side out.
My father used to say all the time in situations like that, he's like, the operation was a success, but the patient died. And so, and that's where a lot of, we have a lot of great ideas that are just absolutely awesome that no one else thought was a great idea. So it's happened many times.
I love it. What you said, so he started the restaurant in 89. What was the intention behind just getting what is now Demos's?
He just really wanted a place to, like I said, that he could retire in, earn money toward the end of his life, so that and that was it. He didn't plan on having anything big from it. My mother took over the front of the house operations. She didn't know anything about it. She never worked in the restaurants before. She was a bookkeeper for my father before that. And so a lot of the systems that we created was because we didn't know any better. We just did it because it made sense, not because this is the way you're supposed to do it. And so that was, but the intent was just to do that. Meanwhile, I had no intention of going into the restaurant. Right. So when I found out when I approached him and said, I want to come back into the restaurant business, is when I found out that he was looking for someone to sell it to. He had already presented it and put it out to about 3 or 4 different people out there to sell the restaurant at that point in time. And then ultimately ended up selling it to me. So that's kind of how that process happened. But but most of what his intent was just to have something to kind of retire in and make money with it. And he didn't have any type of grand scheme of it. Many of the items that we have that are so popular, it's amazing to listen to the stories of some of the items and how they became what they are. The bread is a great example. Originally our bread was created because my father was part of he started the O'Charley's commissary. It was the Western Sizzling commissary, but he started it. Well, so the bread actually came out of the O'Charley's commissary, and that's where he had was from that piece of it. And everyone is like, "Oh, we used to make it by scratch and roll," and like, no, that never happened. But the recipe itself for the dough is actually our recipe that he gave to him. And since then, we moved it to different manufacturers on it. We've used 3 different manufacturers for our bread outside of that, and again, they do part of it and we do part of it, and so it's not just a heat and serve product, but again, it's our recipe that we get to play with. But that's where a lot of that comes from. But I hear people all the time saying, "Oh, you changed the bread," and I'm like, we didn't change the bread. I mean, that's just not something we do. But occasionally, like, it'll mess up. Sometimes the manufacturer, it'll happen. It'll come in and get freezer burn. And if we don't catch it, people will see it.
Oh, yeah.
And then if we still don't proof it correctly, if we don't, but we're always constantly trying to make it more consistent. And every time we change, if the size of it changes, everyone's like, "You changed the recipe." And it's like, no, we're just trying to make it more consistent. We're just trying to make it easier and simpler so that we can sell more of it. But anyway, that's part of it. The soup is something else too. He didn't even want to do that soup.
Really?
He was running out of time. They were running out of money building it. The soup was his mother's recipe, which is a Greek, the egg lemon soup. He didn't want to make that, so he kind of modified that some, and ultimately, had a soup, and somebody said, "Oh, you need to add this extra ingredient to it," and he's like, "Or add more of it." And he's like, "It's not in there at all." So he literally free poured it a little bit. They liked it. And he thought, well, I'm just going to get this to get through the few opening weeks. And then after that, I'm taking it off the menu and going with something else. And it's been on there ever since.
Yeah. It's, I never walk into Demos's without getting that soup, ever.
Well, we ship that soup, by the way, all over the nation now.
Oh, well, see, why'd you tell me that?
So yeah, people like today, especially during this time of year, we have several people that ship the soup. We ship our sauces. We ship a pot roast. We're working on some other items to ship out. We sped up that process during COVID when we were under lockdown, and then when COVID ended, we kind of like, oh well, we'll get to that eventually, and we just hadn't expanded that portion of the menu yet. But we ship quite a bit.
Who do you use? Are you using Goldbelly?
We use Goldbelly, but we also have our own website called Demas Family Kitchen.
Okay,
and so you can either order it through either one of those places.
Goldbelly is pretty cool.
It really is.
I've just started learning about Goldbelly in the last couple of years, and that's a pretty nifty thing. And you've got your own, that's even better. And so it's good stuff. You mentioned your mother, and I've had the pleasure of meeting your mother a couple of times just from being in the restaurant, and she was. I don't even know the best words to use, but just amazing, I think, is probably the better word to just, you walked in the restaurant and it felt like you were walking into her kitchen. Like it was just awesome. What do you think she would think about Demos's and how much it has grown?
She was really kind of, it was kind of funny how her relationship with Demos's, because she was willing to go along with it, because she knew that they had to make money. I mean, again, they were, Western Sizzling was failing, and she was the bookkeeper. She knew how to do it. But my mother was very unique. So my mother failed bookkeeping school. And my father came home from it. Both his bookkeepers quit, his AP person and his controller quit. And he handed her all the invoices and said, "You're my bookkeeper now." And that's how she started doing it. But she couldn't tell you what a credit debt it was. She couldn't do a cash flow statement, but she kind of knew what to do, and she just, again, just did a common sense approach. Well, the same thing happened at the restaurant. She was there for just a little bit. I had just gone off to college. So I was the last kid to go off to college. And she, same thing, the dining room manager quit. I mean, they came in there and there was a key sitting with an envelope, and what that means. And And so my father handed her the keys and said, "You're going to be my dining room manager." And she's like, "I have no idea what I'm doing." She said, "So all I want to do is I will treat them like my kids." And she says, "I know how to raise kids, but I don't know how to do this. So that's all I'm going to do." And so she took that approach. So for her, her passion was really working with the servers, was her servers and the hosts and cashiers. That was her passion, was that
Yeah.
part of it. When it came to the customers, she was very customer focused, but it was more because she wanted to make certain that the employees learned how to take care of customers, learn how to take care of other people. So that's where that came from. And so, she would walk around and she would look, and she didn't have a lot of expectations, but her expectations were going to be met.
Right.
And that's where a big part of it is. So now I would find it very interesting because there's so much, especially with the labor shortage we have now, and with social media, I don't think that she could have, I don't think she would have enjoyed it at all.
Right.
Because
Right.
there's so much you can't say or can say, and there's so much that you can't do, and there's just so much, and it limits your ability to manage with her personality style.
Yeah.
And I think that would have impacted a whole lot with her on that. But she originally did not want to talk to customers at all. Matter of fact, my sister and I had to teach her how to call on tables because she had no idea how to do it, and she was scared that she was a very shy person. And she was fierce, but she was shy.
Yeah.
And so what? And I still remember trying to teach her, and she would try to do it, and she was terrible. I mean, she was absolutely awful with it when we were practicing and role playing. It was really funny. We laugh about it all the time because she would like get her eyes real big when she was doing it, and but eventually she got so good with it that she ended up loving talking to the customers on it, and to the point where the day that she died, she called me to tell me that because she was really sick, and they were already not in the operations anymore anyway. So for many years at that point, but she would still go in and get a cup of soup in the morning time and talk with the servers, and then she would do one lap and talk to customers and then leave. I mean, she wasn't in charge of anything. She wasn't really doing anything. She would point out problems to me, but
of course,
but she but that day she called me and she was excited because she was able to do 2 laps that day, because her health was pretty bad, and she was able to do 2 laps that day, and then later that night is when she died. And so but that meant a lot to her. But it's funny because the reputation she had, even when she wasn't doing anything, was that she was always there in charge. And so she was able to, her reputation outlived her with amazing force, and she made a huge impact in so many people's lives.
She did. It's when I talk to people that know Demos's, and we talk about the restaurant and how long it's been around and what impact it's made into this community, she always gets brought up. So she was definitely a force for sure.
It's funny. I get a customer complaints frequently that tell me how my mother would be disappointed in me. This is not her standard. I get she's rolling over in her grave. My son, when he was a host at like 14 years old, had a lady stop him and said that, basically your grandmother would be disappointed in you for this. And I'm like, it's a 14-year-old kid,
wow.
So yeah, it's that same thing. But I have so many people say it just changed when she died. And I'm like, the letters I write is that just tells you how good of a job she did, because y'all didn't know she wasn't in charge,
right?
She wasn't operating for the moments that she was alive, but it was her systems that we operated. And again, it was her systems that we didn't know weren't systems. She was like, no, I like doing this. And then we would write it down and make a system out of it. I mean, her training book was all over the board, and we had to kind of codify it to make it all make sense. And because again, she just did what she just did. And there was just no other way around it. It was just awesome how she did it.
She was awesome, man. She was like you said, she was a force, high standards, but man, I don't think you could learn from anybody better on how to run a dining room, for sure.
My wife worked for her before she met me. And matter of fact, my mother's the one who called me. I was in law school in Kansas City, and she called me and said, I found the girl I want you to marry. And so I was like, well, I'm in a long-term relationship right now, and I'm 600 miles away, so I doubt that's going to happen. And ultimately end up marrying her. But the stories that my wife has of her, which is a little different, that I got to see or get to hear from that perspective, because like she was about to leave, she was having all sorts of problems. She wasn't doing, personal problems, et cetera. And she was about to leave and go back to her hometown, which is in Knoxville. And my mother just set her down and said, Kristen, your problems will go with you there. You gotta learn how to face those problems, and kind of walked her through it. And then there was another time where my father lost his temper in the restaurant and at Kristen, and Kristen was real upset. My mother said, well, you need to go talk to him. And she wasn't going to do that. That's too scary to go talk to the boss or whatever. So she made my father call Kristen and talk to him, and he explained why he did what he did, and he apologized for his approach, etc. But my mother, it was a genuine care and love for those employees, because again, they were her children. When she said, I'm going to make them my children, that's what she did.
Yeah.
And that was I think that was the magic that most people just can't have and can't operate, because especially if you don't have children, it's just kind of hard to do that.
Yeah. You mentioned labor shortage a minute ago, and I'm thrilled you brought it up. I really want to get your insight on this. I've been having a lot of conversations and literally exactly about that topic. And do you feel like it's the leaders that we have today don't have the skills that myself, you, and obviously your parents and others were taught and learned, or do you think it's generational?
So I think there's several problems that come into it. Obviously, when there's a lot of factors that go into this, and I've written some articles about it, and I've kind of modified some of my opinions of it, because as more stuff comes out. So in September, and I haven't looked it up recently, but in September, in this country, there was 10.7 million job openings in September. In September, there was 5.7 million unemployed. So even if everybody worked, there would still be 5 million job openings that wouldn't be filled. Now, there's a lot of different factors, a lot of different things that come into play here. I mean, we have, the baby boomers are retiring.
Right.
Well, during COVID, a lot of them sped up their retirement. So they would have been around for a few more years, but they sped up their retirement. Things that factored in was when the state passed E-Verify, for the state. Well, even though it was interesting, we were doing E-Verify at the time, and I even had a conversation with the state rep who was sponsoring that bill, and I told him, I said, look, we're doing E-Verify. The problem is that you're going to make those type of workers, it's gonna disappear. And sure enough, I mean, we immediately went from able to kind of pick who we wanted to pick to, hey, you know what, you're breathing, come on in. I call it the mirror test. You fog up the mirror and you're hired. And so it was almost an immediate kind of just suction of workers, because even though, again, we weren't hiring illegals at that time, there were many other people that were. Well, when they lost their employees, they were pulling from the pool that I was needing. And so we had some of those issues that was happening. But I also think, there are things such as, the education system used to have a great co-op program in Rutherford County.
Yeah.
And when they got rid of that program, because everyone has to now go to college no matter what. And so they got rid of that work program, which cost us employees. In Nashville, they used to have a great work release programs out of the jails. And so whereas you can, at that time, they would take a van with prisoners. They would drop them off. They would all come to work. They'd pick them up from work. They would take them back. The state got some money off of it. The employees or the prisoners, the employees, had money to come out of jail with. And so when they get out, they're not immediately going straight back to dealing drugs or doing whatever. They actually have something that they could do something with and have a chance to get out of that cycle they're in. And so I think there's a lot of factors that are involved. Now, with that being said, too, if I know that I can walk down the street and make an extra 50 cents an hour and like it there, and then walk down the street, make another 50 cents an hour, and walk down and make another 50 cents, because that's the problem. Restaurants aren't competing for customers anymore. We're competing for labor.
Right.
And those dollars just keep going up, up, and up, and up, which is impacting our bottom line. Food and labor, as you know, are the two biggest things that impact restaurants.
Yeah.
So food costs are skyrocketing. You can't
Yep.
do anything about that. Labor costs are skyrocketing. And the choice is, do I shut down because I don't have labor, or do I keep paying more for people that aren't qualified for the salaries they're getting?
Right.
And how does that all factor in? And then lastly, to your point of leadership, you know, our turnover continues to go down. And since I turned our business over to Christ, we moved from a toxic work environment, and this is by a third party researcher. This isn't me saying that. To top workplaces, and we've consistently have scored in Nashville's top workplaces for many years now. And so I know that's not a big part of it, even though turnover is pretty big in our industry overall. But what's ended up happening, I think that that the management that's coming in, and they're coming in after COVID, and there's a lot of these problems that are happening. We lost a lot of knowledge gaps. Because so many of the older people retired, we lost a lot of maturity because of that. And then on top of that, there's the mentality of, well, you know what? We don't want to discipline them. We don't want to make them upset because we know they can leave any minute. Well, that's part of the problem. Our job is to teach people discipline. Our job is to teach them so that if they stay in this business, they could become successful, or if they choose to go somewhere else, they could be successful. That's part of our job as an entry level operation, or people that are working for us because they made bad decisions in their life. We can make that impact on them. But when you're constantly running fearful, you can't make that impact. And so that's where some of that plays into it. And then lastly, I have to say, this culture of everybody gets a trophy.
Oh Lord, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, all these things have factored into this labor crisis that we're in. And I can even throw in fentanyl, and I can throw in, you know, because I'm dealing with more drug problems. I can throw in the fact of, you know, I have more homeless employees now than I've ever had, because you know the housing market has gone up. Apartment rents have gone up so much that it's almost impossible to afford.
Yeah.
And so all this stuff. So I don't think there's like one answer that we could fix. I can't say, you know what, we just got rid of that president, we'll be all right, you know, because that's not the truth. I think there's problems from the local level all the way up to the national level. And I think there are societal and cultural problems that we're too busy worrying about our political party more than just getting something correct. I was even corrected one time by somebody said, well, you know, you can say these things about fixing labor, but don't talk about, you know, the immigration part of it, because, you know, that doesn't align with the others. And I'm like, I don't care if it aligns. They're all correct, you know? Right. And so we, you know, and, you know, which is why I'll probably never run for politics. Well, which is why I would never be elected to politics.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. You talked about getting a third party company to come in and look at your culture, and that's something that I'm really passionate about in my world and in previous jobs. What do you think? What was the biggest thing that just kind of jumped off the page or jumped out in the meeting you had with that group?
You know, they had a lot of stuff. I don't even remember some of the stuff they said, but I could tell you what the biggest things that changed was because it was the following year when I found Christ.
Yep.
And so, whereas I cared for employees, because again, I've always liked to teach people.
Yep.
I cared for employees, but my care for employees was such as I care for a piece of equipment. You know what? I take care of my equipment. You know, I make certain that we do preventive maintenance on my equipment. I want to make it last as long as possible because it's expensive. It makes business sense to take care of that piece of equipment.
Right.
But when that equipment goes away, that's cool. I go buy a new one. And employees were kind of the same way. I took care of you because, you know what, I needed to take care of you. But if you got mad and quit, big deal, I'll go get another one, you know, and that was kind of my approach. And there were a few that would touch at my heart, and, you know, and there were some that I really kind of molded and did that stuff. But for the most part, that was a handful. That was like my inner circle type of group. Then, you know, and then it kind of went out kind of almost like a bullseye, you know, as it went further out. And then there was the people at the end where you're like, I don't care what happens to you because you're going to scare the people in the middle. So I could be mean to you, so the middle will do good, you know? But when I found Christ, when he changed my heart, what ended up happening is he changed how I saw our people. And, you know, and yes, I still got to fire people. Yes, I still got to discipline people. Yes, I still got to do all that stuff. And by the way, for all the emails that I got firing people is biblical. I've answered it that way too. But I mean, I've gotten that criticism before. But you got to be able to still. I mean, you're still operating in such a way. And when I started really truly caring about people is when we started seeing that change. Will some people there say you go in there and they'll be like, oh, he really doesn't. Yeah, there's going to be those. There's going to be
Of
people that
course.
don't understand it. There are people that don't like what I do to run a business. But here's the trick: if everybody likes what you're doing, you're messing up.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
part of it as well. So as we, but that's where the big change was. And we do things such as, right now I have an employee council. So I have one member of every restaurant that meets with me once a quarter, and they present ideas that comes from the employees, whether it's a criticism or a a suggestion, and we come together. I would say most of the ideas that come, I can't do. And I tell them I can't do that, can't afford it, or doesn't make logistical sense to do it. But then they have some amazing ideas and some stuff. So the employees have that direct feedback now that comes from it. And then we just recently started something called our WOW team. One of the things that we like to do is we like to say, look, what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a WOW experience, not just for our customer, but for our employees as well.
Right.
And we created this WOW team to be able to communicate stuff down, because we were doing some awesome stuff, but never made it to the employee level. They had no idea.
Yeah.
Because the GM happened to be short staffed the day the instructions were going out, or they were just disorganized,
Right.
and then all of a sudden,
Right.
things just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so we've created that, and that's been going on now for a few months. And so far we've seen success, but right now, a few months is not a trend. And so,
Sure.
but we're kind of trying to work it out in that direction as well. And that's one of the things that we've done as well to make things a little bit better.
That's good stuff. It's good stuff. I don't think there's enough restaurant companies, small or large, that spend the time, effort, and financial to help their team. And I think that's one of the biggest areas of our opportunity in our worlds right now.
Well, one of the first things I did was we hired chaplains before them, and I was told, don't do that. It's too expensive, because the chaplains are based on an employee basis. Well, we have so many employees that it really impacts that bottom line.
Yeah.
But our chaplains have been there for when our employees have gone to jail. Our chaplains have been there when they've died, or they've had family members to die. Our chaplains are there. We had a long-term employee to die in our kitchen in Hendersonville about a year ago, and so we had, our chaplain was there. We closed down for the day to kind of, for just kind of respect and mourning, and just had a kind of a little celebration of life inside the restaurant for anyone to come. But our chaplain was there to help with people kind of deal with that grief, because she was just a wonderful lady. And so, but that's what part of our chaplains are there for on that. And, you can always look at that bottom line and not justify what you're doing. I mean, every time, but you can also do the other thing too. And I'm sure you made this mistake. I've made this mistake. I can't tell you how many times, where you look at the bottom line and you're like, or you're trying two different items. And you're like looking at, I want to use this ingredient versus this ingredient, same ingredient. This one is like $1 cheaper than this one. So this one all of a sudden starts tasting better. And then the customers say, this is awful. Like, what did you do? And you're like, oh, okay, I got to go with a more expensive route. Yeah. So you can do that to justify anything. But again, if your job is to serve someone greater, then all that stuff just doesn't seem to matter as much. Again, you got to still be a good steward. I still got to, I still got to provide for my family, and I got to provide for their families.
Right.
But ultimately, that's where that's our purpose, and that's what we're doing.
I love it. I love it. So during our show, we ask a couple of random questions. All right, just to kind of break a little bit and reset. All right. So the first random question is, excuse me. If you could have dinner with one restaurateur or business leader, past or present, who would it be, and what would you want to learn from them?
Boy, past or present. Present, and all of a sudden the guy's name has escaped me. But the company he has is out of Chicago. It's called Let Us Entertain You.
Yep. Yeah.
And he does such an amazing job creating new restaurants and creating the story within the restaurant, and just the way that he is able to, I mean, he has everything from fast food all the way up to fine dining. He has everything, and each one has a different idea and a different look and a different feel and a different story, and you can eat at 20 of them and not know the difference. He's so incredible at being able to tell the story to his staff, to tell that story to others, and of it. And so that would be my present person. And like I said, for the life of me, I can't remember his name at all. Oh my goodness,
I'm drawing a blank on it too now that you said it.
He and I have written to each other in the past, and I God, I can't believe I can't remember his name. But anyway, but it's Let Us Entertain You, LETUCCE, and then if I have to go with past, I would say that Ray Kroc with McDonald's. And yeah, he's crazy, and the movie made him crazy, but he was crazier than that movie. One of my favorite stories with Ray Kroc is that when he bought the Padres, he paid cash for them, and he was very upset with them because they were not doing well. And he walked down in the 7th inning stretch and gave all the fans their money back and said, "I only believe in putting on good product, and they're not giving you a good product." But his attention to detail and his attention to be able to be consistent 100% across the board, I think is an amazing thing to learn. And I get people to compliment me on a consistency, but I walk in and I see inconsistencies everywhere I turn.
Right.
And I know I'm looking at it from a more critical mind, but how he was able to do that, and is absolutely incredible. I read a biography and I read 2 biographies on him. I'm sorry. And like I said, it's just how he did it. Now, his personal life, I wouldn't want to emulate, but
Right.
his business acumen and the way that he saw things in the operations was absolutely, utterly amazing. And that's why I'd want to talk with him.
It's probably one of the most iconic brands
True.
in
Yes.
the world
Yeah.
ever. Right. I mean, you see the golden arches, you know exactly what they are. Right.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like Nike. You see the Nike swoosh, you know what it is.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right.
And the thing is I don't even like eating there for the most part. I've eaten there when the kids were little, and every now and then, like I'll something will happen. I get their coffee all the time. Their coffee's amazing. And every now and then I might get a chicken biscuit from them when I'm getting coffee. But for the most part, yeah, that's kind of, but again, I respect their company all across the board. I think it's really, really good.
I used to use, when I was a general manager, I used to use McDonald's as a reference for consistency, because you knew that if you were in a hurry and you were driving down the road, that you could whip into a McDonald's drive-through.
Yes.
You could get the 2 cheeseburger meal, fries, and a Coke in 2 to 3 minutes, and you'd be on your way. And you knew exactly what it was going to be. It wasn't going to be a 5-star meal from, it wasn't a James Beard Award winning meal by any means from some amazing chef. But you knew exactly what you were going to get. You know, your fries were maybe going to be hot, maybe not.
That's the biggest problem. But if anybody could solve the fry problem, I'm all in it for that.
You and me both. You and me both. We just added fries to our menu about a month ago, and I keep telling my team we're cooking to order. So we're cooking to order. They take 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Cook them to order. It's wonderful. I mean, but look, he was ingenious in the fact of how he took a brand and just built it to, I mean, a global sensation pretty much at this point. And we could leave here today and, we know exactly what we're going to get when we get it.
Yep.
Right.
That's exactly right.
It's wonderful. I love it. So, you just recently put out a book.
Yes.
Civil Disobedience.
So I have 2 books.
I have, right?
Yeah. My first book was Afraid to Trust, and it's kind of my journey coming to Christ, and then us turning our business over to it, and then watching a business, which was Peter D's, watching it fail. It's the struggles and how that worked. The second book was more in response to what I'm seeing culturally around us, and it's on the duty of Christian civil disobedience. So it's how, as Christians, are we to engage in civil disobedience, to say no? too often I think Christians mistake our love and meekness and humility for weakness, and I think we get confused ourselves on it, and and I think that's where part of the problems that we have in our society are today, because it's not the politicians, it's our culture. And if we as Christians, if we don't fix that problem, then eventually it's going to start coming on us. And once we recognize that, once we know that, at what point in time do we say no? When do we say no? How do we say no? And then we also have to accept there's consequences to saying no as well. And so all of that, all that's just kind of partly in there. It was not even the book. I was actually working on another book at the time. And when I started seeing what was happening during COVID to churches, I was like, and to Christian, and like USA Today said, that January 6th was caused by the Christian belief system. Not by Christians, by the Christian belief system caused January 6th. And, when you start making those subtle little things that a lot of people just skim over, and I'm like, we need to be prepared, and hopefully we never, ever have to use it. But I also know coming toward the end of times, we are. I mean, the persecution's coming. We know that, Jesus tells us, I believe it because he said it. I just hope that it's not me, my children, or my grandchildren. After that, I don't know them, so it won't matter anyway. But, but I think we need to be prepared and understand exactly how to do it and when to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting world we live in today. I started reading some of it the other day, and about a week ago, I guess, and it's pretty good. Pretty good. I just got into it, but it's pretty good.
Good, thank you.
So you were married to Kristen,
yes,
who was not going to be your wife, but turned out to be your wife. And then you have 2 children. Is that correct?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old are they now?
I have one that's 18. She's a freshman in Auburn, and one that's 20. He's a sophomore at Samford in Birmingham.
Okay. My wife would love the fact that your son is going to Auburn.
No,
your daughter is going to
yes,
Auburn. Yeah. She is a huge Auburn fan. So
I have 2. My wife is from Knoxville. Her family is all UT, everything about UT.
Go Big Orange.
And I grew up being bullied in school, and I was bullied by people that were UT fans. So I was like, so I wasn't going to be UT fan. And as a result, they were like, well, you got to pick a college team. Well, at that time, Bo Jackson was like, everybody loved Bo Jackson. So I was like, I'm picking Auburn because it was Bo Jackson. Yeah. And after that, I became an Auburn fan and stuck with it. And so my daughter actually was choosing between Auburn and Alabama. Okay. And I was like, oh, you can't go there. I mean, both my wife and I are both like, oh, Alabama's bad, UT and Auburn not liking Alabama. But what I did with her, and I'd recommend this for anybody that has children about to, like, sophomores and juniors, I had my daughter list what she would see as the perfect school, like the city that it's in, the size, what do they do? And I mean, and she came up with an amazing list. It was 20 items on the list. Well, when it kind of got down to that, which one's better, we went down that list and said, who wins? And they tied on 10 of the items, and 10 of the items Auburn won, and it became a no-brainer at that point. I've also had her do that with the perfect boy. And I said, I said, look, this is your perfect boy. Now, after that, which one of these are non-negotiable? Because her perfect boy might be brown-haired, but if a blonde-haired kid comes over, she's not going to care. But non-negotiable has to treat me nice,
right?
And so. And when she's dated before, we're able to kind of reference that list and say, is that a non-negotiable? Okay, well, bye-bye.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
we wish you well.
Yeah. And I think it's important that you establish those standards. The same thing we do in the restaurant.
Yep.
Here are the standards we're going to have. And you got to meet those standards, or you're going to have to go find a work at a government job somewhere. I mean, that's kind of how that works.
Right. What was she studying there?
Well, she went in for animal sciences, and I don't know if she's going to stay with animal sciences. She didn't like all the classes that she was in, but we told her, I said, you love to read, you love to write, you love to research. So lawyer to me seems to make the most sense for me than anything else. So that's what she's considering that as well. And I'm like, and you are scared of spiders and you want to work in a barn and you can't pick up when the dog messes up in the house without getting sick. So I'm not quite sure
Right.
animals is going to be the way. But the thing is that she's wanted to be a vet since she was like 4 years old. And so I think some of that is that as well. But, again, I wanted to be a lawyer the first time I stepped foot in a courtroom, and I was like 9, 10 years old, maybe I was about 12, I guess. And then once I became a lawyer, and there was nothing bad about it. I still have my law license actually, but I was looking around and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that the rest of my life. And then that's what made me decide to go back in the restaurant business.
What about your son?
My son's is a business major right now. He doesn't know exactly what he wants to do, but this last summer he was managing. He was assistant manager at a Lebanon location, and he fell in love with it. He wanted to have nothing. He was like me. I want to have nothing to do with the restaurant business at all. And because part of it is when you grow up in it, and you hear a lot of the criticisms and the that type of stuff. I mean, when you got to teach them how to handle customer complaints when they're in elementary school, because teachers are complaining to them,
right?
That puts a sad way of looking at the business when they're having to kind of do that. So he didn't want to have to do that. Him going to Lebanon and working there, and he wanted to get outside of Murfreesboro where people didn't know him, and so he went there and he fell in love with it. So right now it's kind of up in the air. He may choose to go in the restaurants. He may choose not to go in the restaurants. He may choose to be in ours or somebody else's. I don't even know what the future is for us either. And my director of operations is older than me, and so we have to sit there and say, okay, how are we gonna handle this? I mean, he's been working with me side by side for 26 years,
right?
And so he'll retire before I do. So it's like, okay, if my son's coming in, what happens if my son doesn't come in? What do I do with it? I got to find somebody to buy it, and and I can just tell you, there's some days where I'll sell it for a Snickers bar. I mean,
I understand. It's the restaurant world. It's the restaurant world. I tell people all the time, if you want to know what the restaurant world is like, just run up. Well, it's not there anymore, but just run up a large hill.
Yeah.
Just run up a large hill.
Actually, run up Trash Mountain. It's probably
there you go. Yeah. You run up there. By the time you get up, it's the whole journey is going to just be awful. Then you'll be okay when you get to the top, and then you'll just love rolling down it. It's great. It's wonderful. Yeah, that's outstanding. So you mentioned earlier you started Peter D's.
Yes.
And then you have, is it 6 Demases?
No, we have 3 Demases, and then we have 2 PDK Southern Kitchen and Pantries,
PDKs.
And then I got a third one that was supposed to have been open back in April. But again, because of labor and supply chain, I mean, I've been paying rent on this building since May. I mean, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
And we just got our temporary occupancy license, but I'm like, I'm not hiring now. No one's going to come right before Christmas.
Right.
And so we're going to have to kind of put that off. And I'm still waiting on the health inspection to come in for, to get that one open, but that one's going to be in Charlotte Pike. And hopefully that'll be open in January of 23. But again, I was actually hoping of September of 21, and then it was April 22, et cetera,
right,
on and on.
Right.
So yeah.
Then tell me a little bit about PDK. I've seen it. I've heard about it. I just haven't. There's not one here in Murfreesboro, correct?
No, we haven't put one in Murfreesboro. We opened our first one in Bellevue, and then our second one in Mount Juliet. And but it's a fast casual restaurant. And for those that are listening and don't know what fast casual is, it's where you go and you pay at the counter, and then they bring the food to you. So it's kind of like a Panera system.
Yep.
But when I was looking at fast casual restaurants, I noticed that they focus on one item. The top 37 out of the top 50 fast casual restaurants at that time sold either burritos, they sold burgers, sandwiches, or breakfast. And there might be an every now and then random weird thing to go in it, but for the most part, that's what they did. And I was like, okay, we know how to sell food fast. Yeah. And so we created a Southern food that has a more of an eclectic menu, so that we can help with the veto power. So we have chicken and waffles, we have shrimp and grits, we got burgers, we got salads, we got chicken tenders, we got buffalo wings. So we got a wide variety, as long as it kind of fits within that that Southern fare, then it works good. And we'd use a lot of the recipes from Peter D's to go over there. So for example, our chicken tenders is the exact same as that we had at Peter D's. The ugly chick, we brought that over. And so we have fresh cut salmon there. I mean, you go to you tell me what fast casual restaurant's going to have fresh cut salmon. And so we have fried catfish. So I mean, again, there's just a variety of stuff that we were able to, the fried shrimp from Peter D's we carried over there. So a lot of that we were able to use and utilize, and then just kind of expanded that menu with some time as well. The other thing we do in there is we also have a gift shop. We had a very large retail component with it. Originally, it was just going to be kind of a few little things just to kind of have decor. That's the pantry part, when it's PDK Southern Kitchen and Pantry. And as we continue to watch that retail grow and people going in there for it, and we now just keep expanding it. We did a remodel in both of them recently to help with the retail sales. We now have a retail team that goes in there, and which Kristen it supervises, it oversees. And but from that, now we have people that go in there actually just to shop for stuff and leave. And I'm like, we got food too.
You can get some lunch.
Yeah. But the great thing about it is I can sell a cutting board. I can sell a cutting board and make the same amount of money as I could sell 10 burgers.
Right.
I'm like, you want to come in there. I don't care how that bottom line looks, as long, where it gets there. The top line come in any way it wants to. Bottom line is what matters.
Agreed wholeheartedly. So it sounds like PDK is doing pretty well for you.
It is.
And it's a mashup of Southern and Peter Demas's and fast, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So the Peter D's that you had, what happened there? I mean, the place is gorgeous. You did a phenomenal job of building it.
Well, actually, we did a terrible job building it. It just looked like we did a great job building it. So, and that's actually in the Afraid to Trust book. So restaurant people would really love that book, because there is it kind of goes through, and it doesn't even give all the stuff that happened in that construction. So there was a couple of things that happened with it. First of all, I drew that restaurant for flow. I mean, and it was a beautiful, perfect flow. I drew it out to scale. Took it to our equipment people. They put it on a CAD. We gave it to architects. We did a nationwide search for architects. We found a group out of Knoxville that was like, okay, this is who we want. We met with them, and they hooked us up with a decorator, for it, and we were all excited about it. And the decorator said, "This is what I want to do." We're like all on board with it. And he said, "All you got to do when you get the drywall up, call me, and I'll come out and put it all up. We'll have it all ready. No problem." Well, the architect didn't overlay the equipment plan, so nothing fit. The whole building was off by feet.
Oh,
the contractor didn't see it either, but kept noticing these problems, but didn't recognize it as a problem that we needed to stop and regroup. When I recognized it, I made the mistake of, I've already spent too much time and money. Everybody's expecting it. I was listening to everybody else. And I said, so I said, we'll just rig everything. So we started kind of redrawing it. Didn't know how bad it was. I just thought I messed up that one little section. And ultimately it was things such as, we had a compactor that didn't fit anymore. The door didn't fit in there. We had beams going into windows. We had, we had no room for when the door opened up for the dirty dish side to bring in dishes. The equipment didn't fit in both the bar and the kitchen. And then once the equipment did get in and we got it there, we had no place for trash cans. And it was a nightmare from it. We had a column in the middle of the server alley because of things that we had to do to rig to get around it. And so it was and it took us all the way to the very end when the bar equipment didn't fit, and I was like, okay, now I know y'all are wrong, because that bar was the replica of the front bar was a replica of the bar that I worked at in Houston's in Memphis. And so I knew that bar like the back of my hand. And I'm like, I know this is right. And then that's when we discovered the problem.
Oh, man.
And of course, everyone's pointing fingers at everybody else. And, so that's where part of the problem. But then we call the decorator and we're like, hey, why don't you come in? We're ready for you. And he goes, oh, were you serious? Like, so we didn't have anything to decorate. So Kristen literally, while we're hiring people, she's literally on her computer ordering decor off of eBay, Etsy, Pinterest. Matter of fact, we even had a customer to say to us, it looked like Pinterest exploded in here. And yeah, it probably did.
That is amazing.
But yeah, so all of that to say, so that's where it started. And then operationally, we had a bunch of stuff as well. And then so at the end of it, when we were done, at the end of it, we had McAllister's to come to us and say, we want to lease the building. And I'm like, okay, we're working really hard for like break even, or I can work not hard and get a rent check.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a no brainer again. So that's why we decided to make that change. And then it was a couple of years after that, someone came along and said, we want to buy the building from you. And I remember a friend of mine, Shane Reeves, said, when someone puts enough zeros on it, you're just going to say yes to it.
Yeah.
And so,
for sure.
So, everything's for sale. And so I was like, absolutely, and that helped us kind of get out of some debt, and, and so we can kind of progress from there.
Do you think there'll ever be another Peter D's?
No.
No.
You
said that really fast.
Yeah, I did. It was the food was unique. The food was good, but there was also a lot of weird stuff with it. So for example, we were the first restaurant in Murfreesboro to bring in the bottled water that didn't have ice in it. Now we'd seen it all over the world. I mean, we steal ideas everywhere we travel, and so. And literally people were throwing fits about it, yelling at us, I want ice in my water. Kristen and the kids, when they were little, they were 12 and 10. She had just gotten her hair cut on the square, and some guy started yelling at her on the square because he doesn't think it's right for him to ask for ice for his water. It was weird stuff like that was happening. And then after a while you start saying, okay, well, I just don't know what I'm doing. So the great thing about PDK is operationally, it's a wonderful concept. I mean, and that other people wouldn't understand, but when it crashes in 10 minutes, we can get it out.
Right.
I mean, that's amazing that you could fix the problems in 10 minutes. Demos's, it takes us about an hour and a half. And we got to be on point to get that, when it crashes to kind of get it back up and swimming. At Peter D's, I've even shut down for a shift because we couldn't get out of it. And I'm like, we got to shut down and just say, look, the equipment broken. Well, the equipment did break. It's the people operating the equipment broke. But but yeah, so but some of it was, but some of the menu items like the Reuben fritters, they were amazing. They were really good. But again, it was just everything became difficult when it was designed to be easy.
Right.
And the other problem we had was we listened to other people of what they thought Rutherford County needed, which is more of an upscale casual restaurant. We originally was going to go in, it was going to be more of a sports bar atmosphere. That was the original idea.
Okay.
And we started listening to everybody else and we're like, oh no, this is a niche we can get in and do great with. And, we like eating in those restaurants too. We need a place for us to go eat at, because you're really going to go eat at your restaurant, not work. And, and so that's where some of those that happened too. So we ended up kind of merging the two. And I think we confused some people. So there was a lot of things we did wrong on it. Again, in the book, Afraid to Trust, it details more on it.
I'm going to have to read Afraid to Trust now.
Yeah.
You got my mind going. I love it. Well, that is outstanding. So, another random question for you. This is probably one of my favorite funny questions, but when you walk into a room or leave a room, what theme music should be played?
Wow. I'm not quite sure now. I would have said for years, probably when when I walk into the room, probably Enter Sandman by Metallica would probably be the, but probably have been the music to play there. But truthfully, I don't even know what it would be now. Good gracious, the way I feel some days, I would think, Here Comes Captain Stupid by Suicidal Tendencies might also apply. But no, I don't know. I truly don't know, because boy,
it's a thought-provoking one, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it's a good one. I love it.
Because the problem is I love my music references. I listen to contemporary Christian.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up listening to heavy metal and punk music.
Right.
So most people probably wouldn't understand if Dead Kennedys were playing or something like that. And throughout the entire time, I've always loved classical music too. So. Yeah. So when I leave the room, there's and I can't remember what section it is within the classical, but it's pictures of an exhibition by Mussorgsky. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's kind of a flight type song, and it just kind of moves fast. So I'm going to have to go with that one when I leave the room, and I'll just stick with Enter Sandman when I come in.
I love it. That is outstanding. All right. Look, I appreciate you being on the show. I got one more question for you, and we'll kind of wrap up. But if you were done today with Peter with Peter Dees. Peter Dees has been done with Demos's and PDK. You're retiring. Your son decides, hey, I'm coming back from Sanford. I'm taking over. I got this. And you say, okay, great, here, take it. What do you want your legacy of running Demos's family restaurants, a brand, to be in this community?
I used to play with legacy all the time. Oh, let me correct you. I will never give my son that. He can buy it.
Well,
yeah,
yes,
it's just like I had to buy it. Yeah.
Yeah. My kids are the same way. No, you can purchase this.
Yeah, and if I got a better offer, it's too bad, so sad for you.
Right.
You can go buy something else.
Right.
But no, I've toyed with this idea of legacy, and the whole idea of legacy. For a while was really important to me. I wanted to make certain I left an impact and made people kind of better at what they were doing, et cetera. And then I realized, that was all about me. That's all about, like how I look, and really most likely in 4 generations, no one's going to know who we are, and unless we do something like George Washington or, something like that, where they're going to study us. But in all likelihood, 4 generations aren't going to remember. Can you name 4 generations of ancestors before you? And so so from that, and I've gotten awards and trophies, and I'm kind of like and I love being honored by the community and by other things. So it's not like because I proudly display them, but I'm like, again, in 4 generations, no one's going to keep any of that. If the restaurant's around for 4 more generations, there might be a couple of them hanging out as decor. Right. But so when it's there, for me, it's not necessarily as much of a legacy as the fact of this is that it's my job to is what Christ commanded us to do, which is to make disciples and to share the gospel. And it's not my job to make converts. So part of leaving a legacy is the idea that it's the result I'm getting, and I leave a result behind. For me, I want to leave and make the impact where somebody else might be able to pick that up and run with it. And that's very hard from a business person. We like to plant the seed, we like to water it, we like to grow it, we like to eat the fruit. Yep. But sometimes we have to plant the seed and somebody else gets to harvest it. And sometimes we get to harvest the fruit and not have to do the work coming in. For me, though, the biggest thing for me is I want to make enough of an impact in people's lives where either they go to Christ, they become more bold and stronger in Christ, or I can leave enough with them so that people will know, hey, this is a real thing. It's not myth. It's real. And that somebody else might be able to take that baton and then run the next 100 yards with it. And so the legacy I plan on leaving is something to that effect. All this other stuff, it's just stuff. I can't take it with me. If I, when I'm in heaven, I'm not going to be running a restaurant. When he creates the second world, I, doubt he's going to put me in charge of a restaurant. All that is just stuff, and I love it and I enjoy it. But for the truth of the matter is when I no longer can see that I can make an impact in our employees' lives, and no longer see that we can make an impact in customers' lives from a faith-based perspective, I won't be in this business. And because that's to me is most important. And again, that's why I teach. That's why I coach soccer. I get to talk to these kids about Christ while I'm teaching them how to catch a ball as a goalie, or how to strike a ball with their foot. I mean, that to me, I get to do it when I teach a business class, leading and managing people. We talk about leadership through the Bible, so they understand that the Bible is practical and has a use for it.
Right.
All of this stuff is designed for that purpose. Because again, if he can save my life, and the way he saved my life, the least I could do is speak out for him and help get enough people to understand, because I know the path that I was on, and I wasn't a bad guy, but I know where I would have ended up. And that scares me to death for all these other people out there that don't know that.
Yeah. It's killer. I love it. Well, thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate you coming to join us today. How can people contact you? I know you do some speaking stuff as well.
Yeah.
How do they get a hold of you? Make reservations at the restaurant?
If you call me making reservations at the restaurant, you get the wrong person. If you want to contact me personally through anything, there's the website is peterdemas.org. You can order books. You can contact me for speaking through that. So that's one way you could do it. You can also go through the restaurant's website and go through the contact us. There's a couple of other eyes that get to it before it gets to me on that one.
For sure.
But yeah, and anybody that's wanting to work, we're hiring right now. So you can come on in and we'll go from there.
Come on down, show up, fill out an app, get to work.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Peter, again, thank you very much for joining us on our show. We appreciate it. Hopefully we gave a little bit of insight to who Peter is and the Demas's family legacy of what you guys have done and the impact you've made in this community. We appreciate it. If you are listening, please like, share, and subscribe to our show, and catch us next week.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.